All right, look, Kev's mom is in hospital, so this year we want to dedicate to her as a refuah. And Kev, do you want to do it because you've got more kavanah for your mom, obviously, than me? Do you want to do it in a Hebrew and a mother's name?
Yeah. So I'll do it. I'll carry on with this book here because I'm doing other stuff today.
Okay, but say your mom's Hebrew name. Because that's
okay, so my mom's name is Shifra Simcha Bas Yeta. And she should have an immediate, speedy refuah shlema.
Amen.
And so I'm just going to say the thing, and also we're going through just for another 10 seconds. We're discussing still the theme of lighting candles, which is the woman's mitzvah. So it's quite appropriate that I say one or two from there for Shabbos.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's just see where we left off. Okay, so it says here, I'll read a couple, they're short ones, and they're quite self-explanatory. If two or more families lodge together, it is questionable whether all the ladies may light candles with a blessing, since one blessing is sufficient to enable all the members of the household to fulfill their duty. The custom is to follow certain authorities to permit an additional blessing to be said by each person who kindles lights. This is because additional lights create more radiance and joy. Such additional lights, however, should be kindled on a separate candlestick. I think that we know. Okay, if one is invited out for the Friday night meal, one should nevertheless kindle lights at home before the Sabbath in order that one may derive benefit from these lights. One should either remain at home until it is dark or ensure that the candles are of sufficient length that they will still be burning upon one's return. So just a quick one. So if you light Shabbos candles and you don't get the benefit of that, I think it's actually considered a bracha levatala, a bracha blessing in vain. So what you can do, like I don't know if I went to this communal dinner. So you can actually switch on an electric light and say the bracha on that, and just obviously leave it on for the whole of Shabbos. Then you're getting the benefit from it. You can do that. Damon, correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, wow. I don't know. I've learned something. That's
good to know.
Because if you light the candles, you don't get the benefit of seeing the light, then it's you shouldn't say the bracha. So you can do that. And I've heard it many times, and I actually do it.
Wow. All right.
So you're saying if you're going to a friend, if you're going out, it's better to rather use a light than candles.
Yeah, if you're going to be back at midnight where the flames will be long out, will be extinguished a long time ago.
Okay.
You know what lasts longer? It's a very good point there. But what does last long is the tea tree candles. They last much. They last about
only
4 hours.
Only about 4 hours, though.
Often, but it's not bad. So most of the time when you go out, you will catch it when you come back. You can. If it's too long, you won't.
So you just get long candles.
But it's interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
Good.
No, I think those candles, long candles, burn much quicker. Tea tree, what happens is the oil collects inside that round thing, and then it becomes like an oil burner, and that's how it lasts 4 hours. I don't think any candle lasts 4 hours, unless you get those big ones that the people use for, very big ones. But otherwise,
that's the only one we use here is the tea tree ones because they're really cheap.
The tea lights, yeah.
They're cheap as well.
Cheap as dirt.
They're cheap and they burn longer. I also
they burn forever
for both reasons.
Yeah.
No, you got a good chance when you come back from shul. They're always burning. If you go out, not necessarily you'll be burning when you come back, but it's still nice.
But did you guys use it on a daily basis in Africa or just on Shabbos?
No, just Shabbos.
Just teasing. Okay.
I get the ESCOM joke.
Yeah, Shabbos in the Galut is 7 days. Didn't you know that, Arthur?
I just learned something new.
Yeah, it is 7
Proudly
days.
sponsored by ESCOM.
No one does any work. Okay, I honestly hope the share helps to give your mom a
absolutely. Yeah.
And may your mom make a quick recovery.
Kevin, sorry to hear about your mom. I need a request, Damon.
Amen. Thank you. Thanks. Please God. Thanks.
Tell us your insight.
Okay. So that whole Mishnah we went through the other day with the two bulls and the Talmud and stuff. I actually went through and I kind of got the idea how actually an easy way to explain it. Okay, if you've got two bulls and the one that's tam takes one that's tam, whoever does the most damage pays only half payment. So whenever it's tam, it's always half payment if it's the most damage. Okay. If one animal is muad and one animal is tam, the one that does the more damage, let's say the tam does more damage, he only pays half. But because muad is always full payment, the one that does the most damage if he's muad will pay full payment. Okay. Next one is if a man attacks an animal, right? Man is always muad no matter what. Okay, so he will always, if he does more damage than the tam animal, he will pay full. If the tam animal does more damage than the muad, they'll only pay half. Okay.
Excellent.
Okay, and the other way, if the animal is muad and the man is muad, it's both full payment. Whoever makes more damage.
No, last point there.
Oh, okay,
You are 99.9% perfect. And I'll tell you something. That is incredible. That's exactly it. But you had to read it a few times to clap that. So that is incredible. The only part that differs on the end was as far as the rabbis are concerned, and I'm just going to share my screen. Well done. That was brilliant. That was indeed.
Yeah, well done. Very good.
Just remember, who's ever muad and whoever's tam, the half or the full. That's all you have to remember. And it's on the most for the animals. It's quite easy. So tam, muad, tam, half, muad, full.
Since you did so well, would you have the honor, Arthur, of reading for us slowly?
Yeah,
well done.
Let me put my glasses on. Okay. If two oxen that were tam fought with and injured one another through acts of keren, they pay for the excess half damages. If both were muad, then they pay for the excess full damages. If one was tam and the other one was muad, if the damage was done by the muad to the tam is greater, he, the muad, pays the excess of full damages. And if the damage is done by the tam to the muad is greater, he, the tam, pays excess of half damages. The Mishnah continues. And similarly, if two people injured one another, they pay in excess of full damages. Similarly, if a person and a muad animal injured each other and the damage is done by the person to the muad is greater, or if the damage done to the muad to the person is greater, he, the one who did the great damage, pays excess full damages. Okay. If the person and a tam animal injured each other and the damage done to the person to the tam is greater, or if the damage done to the tam to the person is greater, okay, if the damage done by the person to the tam is greater, he, the person, pays in excess full damages. If the damage is done to the tam by the tam to the person is greater, he only pays excess of half damages. Okay, and Rav Akiva says, even in the case of a tam that injures a person, more than a person injures a tam, the owner pays in excess of full damages.
Excellent, but you got it right. The only sentence at the bottom, that's just one thing we need to be aware of. I think whatever you read, you got 100% right. Never mind 99.9. That last sentence, I think one just forgot to mention. But you got everything else 100%. Never mind 99.9. That was excellent.
It was just an easy way to remember because whatever tam is half and whatever muad is full. You know, man is always muad. You know, it just came quite easily.
Okay, good. So exactly, I'm gonna just read some. I'm just gonna read this, but I want to add some insight for you guys, a little bit. Gav, what time do you have to go?
I've got to coordinate this thing from about 10:15. I have to get going. Yeah.
All right. Should we rather just meet tomorrow then?
Well, you can cover a lot of ground now, can't you?
10 minutes.
What's the time now? No, it's 10 to 10. I said quarter past. It's fine. Go to 20 past. I'm just going to cut it fine. I think
it's fine,
right.
Damon.
Half an hour from now.
All right. Let's go as quickly as we can. All right. So I want to explain to you that there are differences. There's the difference between the Rambam there's a difference between the Rosh explaining Rashi, and they're different financial calculations, okay? So obviously, if you look there at the shared screen, where it says, if two oxen that were tam fought with and injured one another through acts of keren, okay, they pay for the excess half damages. So I just want to analyze that a little bit more and explain to you what that means.
Can I just ask something about that?
Sure, pleasure.
Why should any of them pay anything if they both are the same status and they do the same damage? What's the point? Why do they have to even pay anything? What's the point?
All right, just repeat what you're saying so I can understand.
If they both tam and they both do care and damage to each other, then it balances it. Why should anyone have to make any payment?
It's a good point.
It doesn't make sense in a way.
No, I'll explain to you. It's a very good point. So Kevin is 100% right in his statement within a certain context. So the default position is the damage that they did to each other, that cancels each other out. Kevin, halachically, you're 100% correct. Okay. So in other words, we evaluate the damage to both the oxen, right? That's number one. We evaluate each ox. So once we've evaluated the damage to both oxen, if both damages are equal in value, they cancel each other out and neither pays anyone anything. You're 100% correct. But it's very unlikely that the damage will be exactly to the zuz value or the rand value of each other. So the portion that is equal, that cancels each other out, but you're always left with what you call an excess. That's why it uses the term excess damage, yeah? Okay? And the one that damages more than the other, he has to pay the less damaged one for the excess. But because it's tam, he only pays half the damage of the excess. So can I give you guys an example? Guys, would you like an example?
I'm listening. Sure. I'm all ears.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
All right, let me give you a financial calculation, Kev. You've got ox A. Okay, you've got Gavin's ox. Okay, now Gavin's ox sustained 40 zuz worth of damage, right? And Arthur's ox sustained 100 zuz worth of damage. Okay, so what happens is the 40 zuz of damage. What's the difference if we take the 40 zuz worth of damage from Gavin's ox and 100 zuz worth of damage from Arthur's ox? Arthur technically owes Gavin 60 zuz. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
If it's muad.
Yeah.
If it's muad, that's correct.
Yeah.
And that's a very important distinction because if it's tam, Arthur then would only owe Gavin 30 zuz.
Yeah.
So you are completely correct. The part at which they overlap in terms of equal payment is cancelled out. They cancel each other out. It's only the excess that Arthur would pay. If it's muad, it's full payment from choice property. If it's tam, it's half payment to the value of the gufa of the animal, meaning the body of the animal. Fine. Let's go to the next one. So we have to deal with a very specific issue here. And that issue is peculiar. You don't necessarily, Gavin's ox doesn't necessarily have to pay Arthur for his ox. Okay? So Kev, very simple, exactly as you said, the excess of the mouse gets cancelled out. Gavin's ox sustains 100 zuz worth of damage. Arthur's ox sustains 40 zuz worth of damage. So therefore, Arthur would owe the difference to Gavin for his ox causing the other ox damage, would be 60 zuz if it was muad from choice property. Exactly as Kevin said, if it's tam, it's 30 zuz. Straightforward. Now, there is one particular criteria. One of the criteria is that it depends how the oxes reacted to each other. So, for example, Gavin's got an ox, and Arthur's ox decided to start first and kick Gavin's ox. Now, if Gavin's ox retaliated immediately, okay, then Gavin is not liable to paying for Arthur's ox's damage. Why? Why do you think, guys?
So just say his ox retaliated.
Yes, in other words, Gavin's ox was minding his own business, and Arthur's ox went to go headbutt with a horn Gavin's ox. Okay, and then immediately Gavin's ox went for Arthur's ox.
Self-defense.
Correct. So it goes
And
back to
it's instinctive as well. They don't think, it's just instinctive.
correct.
Different to human being. Yeah.
That's exactly it. So basically, the Rosh explains that the Mishnah refers to where two began fighting simultaneously, or the second one attacked the first one long after the first attacked it. So why those two scenarios? Because if the first one attacked the second and the second reacted to the provocation, then the damage done by the second to the first is completely disregarded, okay? Because the instigator then would pay half of whatever damage it did to the second because it's done. Because you keep with the principle that whoever acts irregularly and someone else comes and acts irregularly against him, the second one is not liable. Makes sense? So in that case, if there's a delayed reaction from Gavin's ox, then it's not instinctive reaction or self-defense. If the two look at each other, have a dislike to each other, and they go at each other simultaneously. You see oxes, what do you call it? They charge at each other. They scrape the ground. In that particular case, they're both liable, but not if there's an instigator and the other ox is defending themselves. And it's the same when it comes to people, except you're dealing with one major difference. When it comes to people, a man is supposed to do what you call the least amount of damage possible. So when you've got a case of a roidef, in other words, A chases B with a knife, then if B's got a gun, he is meant to say, stop, I'll shoot, then do a warning shot, and then preferably shoot the guy in the foot or the knee. You don't for your shot without a warning when the guy's after you with the knife, if possible, to the heart. You try and render the person incapacitated as opposed to dead. So the least amount of force possible to get your outcome. So that's sort of, why do you think it's not the case of animals with regards to the law of excessive force? Maybe Gavin's got an insight here. He answered that first one well.
Me or just repeat that, sorry, because there was a hell of a noise going in the background. Wasn't sure what was happening. Just repeat that last comment, the last sentence, sorry.
What I'm saying is, if a human being could be up for a very serious case, if not murder, if somebody's after him with a knife, and the first thing he does is, Kevin, he shoots that person directly in the heart, and that person drops down dead, because his response should be at first call to try and incapacitate his fellow attacker, if possible. So if somebody's climbing over your wall, even in South African law, you should warn them, fire a warning shot, and then obviously incapacitate as opposed to an initial lethal response. Why are animals not subject to those sort of constraints?
Because they can't think in, how can I say, in judgment terms. They're just on instinct.
Correct. Exactly that. They cannot measure their response. An animal has no idea of its physical strength, nor the moral compulsion to hold itself back. If you've ever seen two dogs, there's a friend of mine had a pit bull and another dog, puppy, innocent puppy next to it, went for its food. This pit bull gripped it by the neck and shook it till dead. Okay? Animals can be extremely cruel. Even in Jane Goodall's book, remember there was a movie, Gorillas in the Mist with Sigourney Weaver. In 1974, when her memoirs were found after she was murdered, they found that she never made it public knowledge because she didn't want the people to view chimpanzees as cruel, even though we know this of gorillas. But they used to kill each other for social gain, and they tear each other apart limb from limb. There was an extreme brutality that animals have, and they can't measure the response. There is a certain case where there are opinions that even if a human being reacts in the same sort of manner, that he can't necessarily be forced to measure his response. So, for example, I think it was the Rosh, if I'm not mistaken, is that when another Jew is being attacked, or your family is being attacked, you're not entitled to measure your response to the same degree. Okay, but that's just one particular opinion. The rest say that even if it's a family member or fellow Jew, that you still should measure your response as far as that's concerned. Okay, so now that we've dealt with that issue, the complication is going to be with this exercise now. Now, what are we talking about? So let's just go through another note of the Gemara. It says, if one was tam and the other was muad, if the damage done by the muad to the tam is greater, here the muad pays excess full damages. Okay, so I'm going to give you one or two calculations, and now it's going to get a little bit more complicated. Okay, so if the muad inflicted 100 zuz worth of damage to the tam, and the tam inflicted 40 zuz of damage to the muad pays 60 zuz worth of damage to the tam. Does that make sense? That's Rashi explained by Rosh.
Yeah.
Okay, but something should be something should be a little
No,
bit
you
wrong.
should be divided. It should be half payment, not full payment.
But we're talking about a muad animal. What should be full payment? You're almost there, but not quite.
I thought
Almost
you
there.
said it was a tam animal.
No. The second case we read in the Mishnah is as follows. We read the following. We said if one was tam and the other was muad, if the damage done by the muad to the tam is greater, the muad pays the excess full damages. Now that does make sense so far.
Yeah.
Right. Fine. What doesn't make sense is a calculation I'm about to share on the screen, and I want to see from you guys why. Okay. I want to see from you guys why. You guys need to explain this to me. What might be problematic with it? Okay, let me just share my screen. Gav, I know you've got to go. We'll finish in 10 minutes. Okay. Read that aloud, Gav.
I'm on a small phone. Can somebody else read it?
I'll do
Yep.
it. I don't mind. I'll do it.
Please, sorry.
Please.
For example, if the muad inflicted 100 zuz worth of damage to the tam, and the tam inflicted 40 in damage to the muad pays 60 to the tam.
Rashi is explained by Rosh.
Rashi is explained by Rosh, yes.
Okay.
Rosh, so the Rosh elaborated with Rashi. Okay.
Okay, something's wrong with that calculation. I want you guys to see what happens.
Can I ask you can I try something?
Sure.
Isn't the tam only responsible for damage to the tam? The tam inflicted 40 and the damage to the muad. Okay, so isn't the tam only responsible for half damages?
Full.
For 20? No, the tam.
Oh, wait a minute, the tam.
Okay, and what is this example showing you on the screen, guys?
It's showing you that there's actually full damages for the tam, where it should only be half damages, because if he inflicted 40, she only responsible for 20.
So it's 80.
Did you read, honestly, did you read the Schottenstein?
No, I just looked here and worked it out.
Good.
But I was also listening to stuff, so I've been learning that way. So
okay, because most people miss this. Let me explain to you what the problem is, guys. If the muad inflicted 100 zuz worth of damage to the tam, and the tam inflicted 40 zuz of damage to the muad, the difference is 60. That's fine. So the muad pays the tam 60, but there's a problem, because the tam shouldn't pay the 40 it inflicted to the muad. It should only pay the 20.
Yeah.
It means the muad technically owes 80 to the tam.
Yeah.
Can you see that, Gad?
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Okay, so in your own words, tell me what we're saying here.
Me? Who? Which person?
Gavin.
Okay.
You've got it. You brought it
I
up.
can't see the screen properly. That's my problem, man.
If you
But
pinch the
I've got an
screen, you
idea.
can
Let me-
zoom in.
Yeah, I'm going to try. Yeah, I've turned it around. Hold on a second.
And you can pinch the screen and zoom. I discovered that.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can't take off the thumbs half payment if the muad is paying. That's not correct. Otherwise, it's making it more severe for the muad ox.
Yeah, but the
No,
more
no, no.
is the
No, it's not.
damaging animal, the more aggressive than the tum. So
Gav,
that,
say,
the mission started.
If a thumb attacks,
Yeah.
say again. I'm
What
saying
did the
if a thumb
yeah.
if a thumb attacks the muad ox, then you take the full calculations into account. This is the other way around. Yeah, you got a muad ox that's inflicted 100 zuz of damages, and you got a thumb ox that inflicted 40. Why should his damages drop to 20? Because it doesn't work in favor of the thumb. Why should the thumb get an advantage in this particular case?
okay, I don't
Well,
think.
If the thumb's paying the excess, then I understand
Mm.
that the excess should be half. But if there's no excess here, the thumb theoretically should be the full amount. Not the
Okay.
full amount, the half amount.
Okay, so I want to ask you a few questions. First thing is what we've learned so far is we've learned that whatever tub pays, a tub pays half from the body of the animal. Have we learned that so far?
Yeah.
No, I'm asking, Arthur,
Oh.
I'm just asking
Okay.
Gavin one sec, because you've popped it off. But Gavin's got a good point as well. So what I was going to say is, have we not learned so far that if a muad ox attacks the full damages in a tum half, why should it be full now? Because that's what you're saying, the tum's playing full.
No, you take the thumb's not paying at all because the muad is at fault. So the muad is paying 100. You saying that the difference that the muad pay, the excess, should be from 20 instead of from 40.
No,
Yeah.
that's not what I'm
Because
saying.
the thumb. Okay, so what are you saying?
I'm saying as follows. The muad, okay, let's just break this down a sec. The muad caused 100 zuz worth of damage to the tum animal. Now, by all principles, would you agree that the muad owes that 100 zuz?
Yes. No, he owes 100 zuz minus
so
the.
hang on, that's the first step. So listen, that we agree on, right?
Yes,
And then
yeah.
if the tum inflicted 40 zuz worth of damage to the muad, would you agree that as a tum it should pay 20?
If it's at fault, but in this particular case, it's not at fault.
No, we didn't say it's not at fault. That's exactly the thing of the Mishnah. We didn't say that. I'll read the Mishnah again. I just want to share.
Okay, so are they both at fault?
I just want to share the screen. Just hang on for me 1 second. I just want to share it, just so that you can see something. Okay, so read line. If one was tum, read this. If one was tum,
If one was tam and the other muad, if the damage by the muad to the tam is greater, the muad pays the excess full damages. If the damage done by the tam to the muad is greater, the tam pays the excess of, must be half damages.
correct.
It's of half damages. Yeah.
Correct. So what we've learned so far with the calculation I shared with you, just as a matter of interest, is that can you see my screen?
Not
Okay.
yet.
So we've learned here that this is a case where we've read that the muad in this case inflicts more damage than the tum. If the tum inflicts more damage than the muad, the tum should still pay half of whatever he inflicted. He might pay more, but he still pays half of more. Are you with me? Whether the muad damages less or more, he still pays full, whether it's a less or a full amount. In principle.
I think, can I say something?
Sure.
think you're saying see them as separate cases, not who is it, because they both did damage. So that's easier, maybe. Go. You see them as separate incidents.
Explain what you mean.
Because then you can tell it's easier. You won't get confused as working out the damage. Then you can know what how much damage one is liable for.
So what you're saying is here it's worked together, but you should work it out as a separate incident. Is that right?
Yeah, because if you try to see who's at fault, then obviously the one who's done more, seems like the one who's done more damage is at fault.
Okay.
Right.
All right, I hear what you're saying. All right. So listen, let me just address the particular issue. So far, what we learned, whether the muad damages more than the tam or less, whatever he damages, he pays for in full. Whatever the tam damages, whether it's less or more than the muad, he pays for in half. That's what we've learned so far. Okay. And that is the view of the Rambam, and that's the view of Tosfot, Maimonides and Tosfot. The Rosh explaining Rashi said, no, that's not the case. We can see we're 20 zuz short. How do we know we're 20 zuz short? Because what's seeming to happen in this particular case is as follows. And if Gavin can't see my screen because he's not on video, do I read it to you, Gav?
No, I can see it. I don't have to be on video to see you.
Okay, fine. So, for example, if the muad inflicted 100 zuz worth of damage to the tam and the tam inflicted 40 zuz in damage to the muad pays 60 to the tam. So what it's saying here is the Rosh is explaining at Rashi that there doesn't seem to be a half payment damage for tam in this particular case. When these two oxen attack each other. We have only learned a case so far when one ox attacks the other, but not when there's a conflictory combat between two different oxen. Are you with me? Just bear that in mind.
So just say that again, Damon.
I'm saying before we always learned about one ox damaging another. We never learned about two oxen in a conflict with one another.
Yeah.
Never. So since that's the case, the Rosh is explaining it. Rashi is saying that that common damage that they both inflict to each other is cancelled out because it uses the word excess damage in the Mishnah. In other words, the muad pays full excess damage. The tam pays half excess damage, meaning the common damage to both animals is cut out. And how do we know this? Because that part where the Mishnah starts, where it basically says, this is the explanation of Rashi, that we evaluate the damage to both oxen. If both damages are equal in value, they cancel each other, and neither owner pays anything. If the damage of one exceeds that of the other, then the owner of the less damaged one pays the owner half the difference if it's tam, and half the difference the full difference if it's muad. So here, what it's taking into account is it's not breaking that principle. In fact, what it's saying is that damage they have in common is cancelled out. So it doesn't seem that it's only for excess damage that half amount of tam comes into play. But since they're equally responsible from the animals in terms of attacking each other, the common point of damage is cancelled out. So, for example, if I've got a tam oxen, Gavin's got a muad oxen, they smack each other, and it's 40 zuz each. We don't owe each other anything. It cancels out. I don't say,
sure?
Well, I'm dead sure. This is the Rosh Rashi.
Okay.
I'm dead sure.
Okay.
So this is the Rosh as explained to Rashi. Rambam, Maimonides, and Tosfot don't hold like this. Okay. But the Rosh as explained, the Rosh explaining Rashi said he does hold by this. So in other words, it doesn't, when the two oxes are in conflict with each other, the damage they have in common, it's as if the tam is muad in that case. Okay. It's only the excess. It uses the word excess damage when the two ox fight each other, not when a tam just attacks a muad or a muad just attacks a tam. This is when both, and it's the first case we see when both oxen are attacking each other. In that particular case, Rosh views Rashi's opinion as that the common damage is equal. It's no such thing as half for a tam. Only if there's excess does the half payment damage come for tam.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand it now.
Fine. But the Rambam doesn't agree, because what does the Rambam say? It says that if the Muad inflicted damage, for example, here, say the same case, 100 zuz, okay? And the Tam inflicted damage of 40, right? Then what he's saying is that even though that common damage is 40 and the excess would be 60, you still half the damage. In other words, what you say is you can't take them as canceling each other out. The principle still applies. This is what the Rambam says. In other words, full payment. How do I explain this clearly? Full payment would be exactly the same. So what do we mean? We mean this as follows. I've got a Tam ox, okay? It inflicted 40 zuz worth of damage to Gavin's ox. Gavin's got a Muad ox and it inflicted 100 zuz worth of damage to my Tam ox. So according to the Rambam, it's clear. I owe 40 to Gavin. I would only pay 20 because my ox is Tam. Gavin owes me 100. It's not half. And in that particular case, he'd owe me 100. So I would pay the 20 of my 40 to Gavin, and he would pay me the 100, which means Gavin actually only owes me 80, not 60.
I agree with that.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
That's what we've learned so far. How do we know that Tosfot agrees with this, Gavin? Because Tosfot is of the opinion that we've learned nothing new from this particular ruling. And the only way that Tosfot could say such a thing is if he agreed with the Rambam. But obviously Tosfot came before, or should we say if the Rambam agreed with Tosfot. So Rambam says, and Tosfot says nothing's changed here. It's contributed, the words in the Gemara is it's contributed no new principle of law. So Tosfot then can't hold according to the Rosh's opinion of Rashi, meaning that what is in common damage, Tam and Muad pay the same, and it's only the excess that you'd calculate half payment damage for Tam and full for Muad. Does that make sense, Gavin?
Yeah.
Kevin, does that make sense? And then we're done for this.
What? That effectively he only pays 80 instead of 100 because at the time.
No. In fact, effectively he pays 80 instead of 60 because the first calculation is very, very simple, right? I've got an ox that damaged Gavin's ox, and my ox is Muad. It caused 100 zuz worth of damage to Gavin's ox. Gavin's ox is Tam and gave me 40 zuz worth of damage, right? So according to Rosh explaining Rashi, the common damage is equal. There's no such thing as Tam and Muad on common damage. It's only calculated if two oxes attack each other on the excess. And what's the excess here? The excess is 60 from my ox. Now, if my ox happened to be Tam, then I would pay. If my ox was Tam, I would pay Gavin obviously the only 30. But because my ox is Muad, I pay Gavin the full 60 excess. Okay, that's the Rosh explaining Rashi. According to the Rambam and Tosfot, is that the calculation is not worked on the common damage. In other words, Gavin's Tam ox caused me 40 zuz worth of damage. He would owe me 20. My Muad ox caused him 100 zuz worth of damage. I'm 100. So therefore, if he gave me 20, I would only owe him 80. Therefore, I pay him 80 zuz. So the bottom line principle is as follows. The only difference between Rambam Tosfot compared to the Rosh explaining Rashi is Rambam and Tosfot say that the Tam half payment damages works out even in the common damage. Okay? And what would work out then is if my ox was Tam and caused 40 zuz worth of damage to Gavin, and his ox was Muad and caused 40 zuz worth of damage to me, it doesn't cancel each other out, according to the Rosh's explanation of Rashi. It means that Gavin would owe me 20 Zuz, because his ox was muad and mine was tam. So we both owe each other 40, but I only own 20 because my ox is tam.
Yeah,
So according
which makes sense.
to Tosfot, correct. According to Tosfot and Rambam, the tam ox still pays half at that level. According to the Rosh explaining Rashi, the common damage between them, there's no such thing as tam and muad. Only on the excess damage does the tam and muad factor come into play.
Yeah. And lastly, why should you have to pay for a muad attacking your tam and lose out when your animal was tam in the beginning? You lose out on the money then. So I understand it.
No.
I've got to go. Sorry, guys. Cheers. I've got to go. Thank
Okay.
you. Eh?
Yeah, ciao.
Cheers.
That has nothing to do with it, mate.
Okay. Just a guess.
Because it's not a principle of that. Both animals attacked each other. If one responded in retaliation, it's self-defense.
Okay.
So that principle would remain. Gav, okay, you up to date? Then we can finish now.